For 13 years, Joseph waited. 13 years of betrayal, 13 years of slavery, 13 years of prison, 13 years of unanswered questions. Then, one morning, he woke up a prisoner. By nightfall, he would become the second most powerful man in Egypt. But power was never Joseph's greatest test, because soon the men who destroyed his life would stand before him once again. This is Untold Stories of the Bible, the hidden emotions, silent struggles, and human stories behind Scripture. Today, we witness one of the greatest reversals in all of Scripture. A prisoner becomes a ruler. A victim faces his betrayers. And forgiveness changes everything. This is Joseph before Pharaoh. Egypt's most powerful man could not sleep. Pharaoh dreamed of 7 healthy cows. Then 7 thin cows emerged from the Nile and devoured them. He dreamed again. 7 healthy heads of grain, followed by 7 withered heads, consumed, destroyed. No one could explain it. Suddenly, the cupbearer remembered. A forgotten prisoner, a Hebrew slave, a man who understood dreams. Guards rushed to the prison. Joseph was shaved, washed, given new clothing. Within hours, he stood before Pharaoh himself. 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. Egypt must prepare now, or millions would suffer later. Pharaoh is astonished. Pharaoh removed his signet ring and placed it on Joseph's hand. The prisoner became governor. The slave became ruler. The forgotten man became impossible to ignore. Just as Joseph predicted, the famine arrived. Crops failed. Nations suffered. Hunger spread. And one desperate family began a journey toward Egypt. They entered Egypt seeking food, bowed before its governor, never realizing the ruler before them was Joseph. Joseph looked at the men standing before him. They were older now, worn by famine, responsibility, and years that had passed. But he knew them instantly. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. The brothers who had once stood above a pit and listened to his cries. The brothers who had sold him away and returned home with a lie. Yet they did not recognize the powerful Egyptian ruler before them. To them, Joseph was only a stranger in royal clothing, stern, commanding, and impossible to read. Joseph questioned them carefully. "Where do you come from?" "From the land of Canaan," they answered. "We have come to buy food." But Joseph pressed them further. "Are you all from one family?" And slowly the truth came out. They spoke of their father. They spoke of one brother who was no more. And then they spoke of the youngest, Benjamin, the only other son of Rachel, the only brother Joseph had never stopped longing to see. Joseph's heart tightened. But he did not reveal himself. Not yet. Instead, he gave them a command. Return to your father. Bring your youngest brother back with you. Only then will I know you are telling the truth. The brothers stood in fear. They could not understand why this Egyptian ruler cared so much about Benjamin. But Joseph was not simply demanding proof. He was searching for something deeper. He needed to know whether the men before him were still the same brothers who had once sacrificed one son of Rachel for their own jealousy, or whether time, sorrow, and guilt had changed them. Joseph allowed the brothers to return home with grain, but one brother remained behind. Simeon was held in Egypt as a guarantee that they would return. Then Joseph gave another secret instruction to his servants. Put each man's silver back into his sack. The brothers left Egypt, carrying food for their families. But as they traveled home, one of them opened his sack and found his money inside. Fear seized them. "What has God done to us?" they whispered. "What has God done to us?" they whispered. For the first time, they began to connect their present fear with the sin they had buried years ago. "We are being punished because of what we did to Joseph," they said among themselves. "We saw his distress when he begged us for mercy, and we did not listen." They did not know Joseph had heard every word. They did not know the ruler they feared had turned away. Back in Canaan, the famine grew worse. The grain from Egypt began to disappear. Hunger returned to Jacob's household. But the brothers could not go back without Benjamin. When Jacob heard the demand, grief rose inside him. "Joseph is gone," he said. "Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin too?" Benjamin was all Jacob had left of Rachel. He could not bear the thought of losing another son, so he refused. Days passed, then weeks. The food grew scarce. The children became hungry. The household waited in silence. And eventually, Judah stepped forward. Judah had not always been a man of courage. Years earlier, it was Judah who suggested selling Joseph instead of killing him. But now, something had changed. He looked at his father and said, "Send the boy with me. I will take responsibility for him. If I do not bring him back to you safely, then let me bear the blame for the rest of my life." Judah was no longer speaking like the brother who had once watched Joseph disappear into slavery. He was speaking like a man who understood the weight of loss, a man who had learned what his choices could cost. Jacob looked at Benjamin, then at Judah, and with a heart full of fear, he finally allowed his youngest son to go. The brothers returned to Egypt. This time, Benjamin walked among them. Joseph saw him from a distance. His younger brother, the child he had left behind, the one face that still carried a piece of home. Joseph's composure almost broke. He ordered his steward to prepare a meal for the men. At the table, Joseph arranged the brothers according to their birth order. They looked at one another in confusion. How could this Egyptian ruler possibly know? Then Joseph gave Benjamin a portion 5 times larger than the others. And Joseph watched. He watched their faces. He waited for jealousy. He waited for anger. He waited for the same bitterness that had once turned them against him. But it did not come. Instead, the brothers ate together. They laughed together. And Benjamin was safe among them. But Joseph needed to know more. Would his brothers truly protect Benjamin when protecting him came at a cost? So Joseph gave one final instruction. "Fill their sacks with grain," he told his steward, "and place my silver cup in the sack of the youngest." The next morning, the brothers began their journey home. They were relieved. Simeon had been released. Benjamin was with them. Food was on their donkeys. At last, it seemed they were returning safely to their father. But before they had gone far, Joseph's steward came racing after them. "Why have you repaid good with evil?" he demanded. "My master's silver cup is missing." The brothers were horrified. "We would never steal from your master," they insisted. One by one, the sacks were searched. Reuben's sack, Simeon's sack, Levi's sack, then Benjamin's. And there it was, the silver cup. The brothers tore their clothes in grief. They could have abandoned Benjamin. They could have returned to their father and told another terrible story. They could have saved themselves. But this time, they did not run. They returned together to Egypt. They stood once more before Joseph. Joseph spoke coldly. "The man in whose sack the cup was found will remain here as my servant. The rest of you may go home in peace." It was the moment Joseph had been waiting for. Benjamin could become a slave, and the brothers could walk away, just as they had walked away from Joseph years before. But Judah stepped forward. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Please, my lord, let me remain here as your servant instead of the boy. Do not take Benjamin from his father. Our father has already lost one son. If Benjamin does not return, the grief will destroy him."
Joseph turned away. His chest rose and fell as he fought back years of pain. The pit, the chains, the prison, the loneliness. And now, before him, stood the brothers who had changed. Joseph could no longer hold back the truth. He ordered every Egyptian servant out of the room. The doors closed. Only Joseph and his brothers remained. Silence filled the palace. Then Joseph wept so loudly that the sound carried through the halls of Egypt. And through tears, he spoke the words that would change everything. "I am Joseph." The pit was not the end. The slavery was not the end. The prison was not the end. Every painful chapter had been carrying Joseph toward a purpose he could not yet see. What his brothers intended for evil, God used for good. Years earlier, a frightened 17-year-old boy stood at the bottom of a pit, abandoned, betrayed, forgotten. Now, he stood surrounded by family, not because life had been fair, but because God had been faithful. What part of Joseph's journey spoke to you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and join us for another chapter of Untold Stories of the Bible. Until next time, the story continues.